So as Chief Executive Officer of the Global Center on Adaptation, first tell us what your organization is about.
Yes, think about it. Climate change. You, of course, we're living here because in Kenya, we're in the front line of the climate emergency, right? We live it. I don't need to explain to people at home that the climate emergency is not an imagination, it's here. But the sad reality, what makes me sad, is Kenya did not cause the climate breakdown. Africa did not cause the climate breakdown. Think about it from a global perspective. Africa contributes 3% of greenhouse gas emissions, but is the big victim of the climate emergency. There is a gross injustice in the world where Africa is suffering but is not contributing. It's basically a climate apartheid regime where the North is polluting and Africa is paying. So, against that background, what is the way forward, Catherine? Obviously, the world as a whole needs to lower the carbon footprint. But Kenya and Africa is hardly emitting, so there's not much Africa in and of itself can do. But still, this country, this administration said, well, we will do our part in terms of lowering the carbon footprint. But the other part of the equation is, even if the carbon emissions would be lowering in the coming years, we're already living the impacts today: droughts, floods, storms, heat waves. So we need to adapt to that reality.
Yes.
We put on the table, together with your president, President Ruto, the largest adaptation program in the world for Africa. It's $25 billion US dollars over 5 years. And that money comes from the global north. So we are very simple and practical as I am. We attract money from the global north to invest in Africa.
So far, how much have you been able to raise?
8.4 billion US dollars in 2 years. 8.4 US billion dollars in 2 years. And you would say, well, that's a lot of money, and it is. That's incredible, and it is. That's what we didn't expect, but we did. So I think we have over-delivered as opposed to over-promised. But it's by far not enough. How much does Africa as a whole need on an annual basis to adapt to the climate change, to change the agriculture sector, to change the infrastructure? Is in the order of $100 billion a year to be really resilient to the climate shocks. How much is flowing on an annual basis today is $10 billion. So there needs to be a tenfold increase. So yes, again, we are very humbled by the achievements which we have achieved. But no space, Catherine, for complacency here. It's not just climate narrow, it's about climate development, jobs, growth. This is the prosperity agenda of the 21st century, and that's how we just positioning the climate agenda, because it simply makes economic sense to invest.
So how many countries have you
invested in?
20,
in Africa, 28.
20.
In 28 countries to date during just the last 2 years. Well, but the thing is this. There are more countries than 28 in Africa. Hence, there are also countries which we haven't served to date. So again here, we're scaling up our resources, we're scaling up our engagement. And that's why I was so grateful that it was President Ruto came to the floating office. He said, Patrick, this is fantastic. Is it really floating? I said, yes, Mr. President, it's floating. Actually, it's on the water in the largest port in Europe. It goes up 2 meters a day, it goes down 2 meters. He said, this is something which we also need in Nairobi. Obviously, we don't have the water to float on. But I want to have a nature-based office of the Global Center on Adaptation as the Africa office in Nairobi, which we agreed on. Not just for the sake of having an office here, but it is much better to have Africa-led, Africa-owned institutions and solutions driving this agenda. So we're now in very advanced conversation with this administration to start building our Africa office, and it would be fantastic if you were to be there during our grand opening anytime soon.
So the HQ will be here for GCA.
Indeed.
Well done.
Yes.